coming up. Change, nothing stays the same. Change, yeah, you hit the ground running. Change.
Hey guys, here we are again. Unchained, our podcast. This is the second episode, and we're going to be talking about the mind, body, and spirit of food. Marc Allen here, and he's recently read a book by, who is it?
It's David Goggins. His newest book called Can't Hurt Me, and he's a Navy SEAL. They're calling him the toughest man alive, or the ultimate as far as mental toughness. And he's a guy that came from a background of just really limiting beliefs emotionally, really horrible childhood.
He was initially 300 pounds, and because of his childhood, he got into a deep depression.
Yes.
And was overeating and didn't think very highly of himself.
Yes, and had a very poor self-image, and was watching a TV commercial late one night for the Navy SEALs, and decided that that's what he wanted to do. And of course, and in his present state, all of the people around him said there's no way you can do it, and all these things happen. Long story short, he had 90 days to lose over 100 pounds to even qualify to participate in the training to see if he could qualify, and was able to not only do that, but went on to become a Navy SEAL, an Army Ranger, and all kinds of different things, and participated in these huge endurance events called the Ultraman, which is like the most insane race ever devised. It's a 6.5 mile rough water swim, 250 mile bike ride, and then when you're done with that, you do a double 26 mile marathon, so 52 mile marathon. And he's gone on to do numerous Ultraman races and all different types of just, to where it's more of a mental thing. Also was in a thing where he ran around a mile track for 48 hours, and it's like the mental toughness that's achieved. But so today we wanted to talk about how food is not just about supplying nutrients for your body, but even more important for your motivations and your emotions, and even things like your confidence and your certainty. And we talked about in the last episode we did about empowering beliefs versus limiting beliefs. And what if there were some ways that you could cut out certain things that were causing emotions and chemicals in your body to have you kind of view things in a more limited fashion? And what if that could be switched to where you could be taking in better quality nutrition and things that would cause you to be more empowered? And
the bottom line that we're talking about today is how food changes not just your body, but also your emotions and your mind. Yeah? And so we talk about the mind, body, spirit. I use the spirit and the emotions kind of interchangeably when I talk. So when you hear that, just know that it could be one or the other. How food can truly change your being. A lot of people really accept how food can change the body. Over time, your diet, what you're eating, can change how your body looks and feels, but it's more than that. We are a total mind, body, spirit being. We aren't just a body, we aren't just a mind, we aren't just our emotions. We're all those three things together. One of the cool things about the Kung Fu that we practice is that that integrative belief. And the more we can bring this integrative ideas and acceptance into our everyday life, we can benefit from things that Marc's going to talk about today, and just make ourselves feel better so that we can get over so much of the struggle that we're in throughout our day. What we eat helps us to either become less limited or more limited. So, where do you want to start, Marc?
Well, we Many of you that are watching this may be familiar with the book The Zone by Dr. Barry Sears. Came out years ago, and Dr. Sears was one of the first people that talked about the hormonal reaction that happens based on what we eat. And that has to do with the macronutrient profiles of any type of thing that you eat. Basically what Dr. Sears said and proved is that literally a hormonal cascade is created in your bloodstream. And there are certain types of foods and certain things that you can eat that can make that a really favorable thing or a really kind of a very limiting thing for you. For example, many people out there go to Starbucks or they go to a coffee place and they have something that has caffeine. Well, caffeine actually produces an effect in our body chemically, and also can affect our thoughts, our concentration, our mood. Too much caffeine can adversely affect us. And so just as an example, not just things that have calories in them, but anything that we ingest that we would kind of classify as like a food, because it's going to be anything that we're putting in our body, can create not just physical things that can vary, but can create emotional, mental, even spiritual things. There are certain psychedelic drugs that people can ingest that create all kinds of crazy experiences and chemical reactions in the mind, and can also affect the body and the cells of the body. So one of the things that, and then of course you've also got chemicals in things that are in commercial foods to think about. There are additives that are added into many of the commercial brand foods that are not really that great for us. In fact, some of them are downright toxic to us. And so, one of the things that we wanted to cover today is we wanted to cover ways that you can increase the vitality that you have, and thereby increase the concentration, the focus, and kind of just basically feeling better and feeling like you want to take on the day more often. And then the things that are maybe in your diet right now that you're not aware of that could be limiting all those things, and maybe even could be sabotaging a lot of the great thoughts, the great experiences, and the great mood. Because one of our goals here for anybody watching this is really things to cultivate kind of the ultimate experience in life, and to bring about a condition where you can have long-term happiness, where you can be happy right now, you can feel good right now, you can be healthy right now, and which can lead to a lot of better things for you.
And that's the name, Unchained. Unchaining you from the struggle that we all go through. But what if it was a little bit easier? That's what we're bringing. We want to bring this stuff to make it a little easier on you, because honestly, we want to help. That's all there is to it. We want to help, and we found some ways through our own practicing of life, of kung fu, of eating, and really, at the end of the day, it's about all these things together, an integrated approach. So that's why we're talking about the mind, body, and spirit of food today. So if you're choosing to eat something that is packed full of vitamins and nutrients versus something that is filled with sugars and just very little substantialness for your body, that takes a toll on your emotions and your mental state. You're going to become more lethargic. You're going to become, if you're eating, let's say you're eating bonbons, right? Or you're, or a Twinkie, or a cake, or cookies, or anything like this. These things aren't things that help us to be higher level in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our spirit. They just aren't. So if we think about how do we get the best of everything? We are meat eaters, My wife is, she's a pescatarian. So there's different levels of thought within what we're doing to help us to change ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. So if you're eating things that the body actually needs versus eating for a very surface level thing, we're talking about a deep thing. In our practice of Kung Fu, we talk about internal versus external. when you're eating more for taste of sugar, that is a very externally driven approach to eating. The internal arts such as Tai Chi, even our practice of Wing Chun is an internal type of Kung Fu. And when we talk about internal, it's a matter of what is good for us internally. What helps us from a mental and emotional, spiritual place, not only a physical place. We believe they all come together. That's the yin and the yang. So if you're choosing something that is going to make you feel better, there's one thing that Marc turned me on to, is a powdered green drink. What was that? Who was that by?
Yeah, so there's a number of different brands out there. The Super Greens, which would be kind of it's what it is it's the equivalent of green organic vegetables. And what they do is they basically pull all the water out of them and they make it powdered and concentrated, so that 1 teaspoon of this is the equivalent of eating like a whole bag of dark green organic vegetables. And it's equivalent of 4 servings really for the day. So for people that are not getting adequate nutrition, or they need kind of a safeguard, they can basically take a teaspoon of this and stir it into water or a juice or a smoothie, and they'll get literally a full day's serving of dark green organic vegetables.
One of the coolest things, because it's really, really simple. Mm-hmm. You get this, and you don't need really a blender or anything like that. All you need to do is put, it's the equivalent of putting sugar in your, so why put sugar in there when you can put this in there, this super green food. And I can tell you, you feel it immediately. It's like this, it's like a burst of energy, and you really feel less tired. Sometimes I get tired and I don't want to have caffeine. This can be a substitute for caffeine.
Yep, absolutely.
It literally wakes you up. It literally makes you feel better. So really, really cool, simple little thing you can do to add to your life that helps your mind, body, spirit.
Yep, yeah, and there are a number of brands that are good quality brands. My friend Howie owns a company called Fresh Greens, Fresh Products, and it's spelled with a PH, P-H-R-E-S-H. So if you find that online, or they're in many stores, but there are many brands that are quality. Just look for the ones that are organic, because one of the things is when you do organic, and I used to tease people. I used to date a girl that was totally into organic everything, and I used to tease her because I just didn't know. And now I make every effort to have everything that I eat be organic and free of chemicals and things like that, because the chemicals themselves will produce these adverse hormonal reactions. For example, if you're trying to lose weight and you have some of these chemicals that are in pesticides that are sprayed on vegetables, and they will increase the level of estrogen in your body, for example, for one. And if you're a man or if you're a woman, you're trying to lose weight and your hormones get all out of whack like this from some pesticides you're ingesting. And the same thing with meat, protein. If you're consuming commercial grade meats that could be injected with these hormones versus grass-fed beef and these range-fed organic meats and things like that avoid all that stuff. Basically, what happens when they're pumping the cow full of all these hormones, when you're eating that's what you're eating, and that's going to affect your hormones once it's inside you, and not in good ways. So, when you look at these chemical reactions and the vitality that Adam was speaking about with the green drink, now you've got kind of 2 things in your favor. You start paying attention to, okay, I'm going to do grass-fed or I'm going to do organic when it comes to meat. If you are a meat eater like us, I'm going to substitute because I know I don't eat enough vegetables in a day. I know that I need to eat more. I could just do a teaspoon of this, and in 10 seconds I get my daily servings of organic vegetables. That's great. The other thing that is important is the glycemic index. You may have heard this term before. All it is, just in simple terms, I'm going to make it a 10-second definition that you'll always remember, It's a range of 0 to 100, and it's a scale of 0 to 100, and that has to do with how fast your body processes any type of food, how fast food enters your bloodstream. So from 0 to 100. Now 100, the higher the number on the glycemic index, 100 would represent something like pure glucose, pure sugar, the highest blood sugar spike you could get. When somebody goes into the hospital and they want to spike their blood sugar, they give them glucose, and glucose is 100. And as you get higher and higher, it gets it creates a disadvantage to you hormonally the higher it is on the glycemic index.
So what is something that we can do, and for our viewers, to find out what the glycemic index is?
Yes, great question. So God loves the internet, right? You can Google search glycemic index of common foods, and it'll give you lists for free of every food there is. What you want to do is you want to primarily throughout the day be eating foods that are 50 or below on the glycemic index. And these are foods that that don't spike the blood sugar too much. And the reason that there are times when you can elevate the blood sugar, like right after a workout would be a great time to have blood sugar elevated because your insulin sensitivity is better after you just trained, you just got through all the carbohydrate in your muscle storage and all that. So it's an okay time to have a higher glycemic thing. Like for example, pineapple is an example of a high glycemic fruit. But if you're gonna just sit around and you're laying on the couch and you're eating pineapple, even though it seems like a very healthy food, without any other food in your system, and you just do that, you're gonna elevate your blood sugar too high, and the challenge that's gonna happen with that is it's gonna have to come down again, and it's gonna come down sharply. When the pancreas produces too much insulin at one time and spikes the blood sugar level, all of a sudden, within minutes, it's gonna start crashing, plummeting back down because your body tries to normalize everything. And so when you have these foods that constantly spike insulin levels like that, the pancreas is like, oh my gosh, I gotta push more insulin out. Insulin is a hormone that when it's in your bloodstream, you can't burn fat. It's a storage hormone. So again, this is for people that are looking to lose weight. You don't wanna spike insulin often if you're trying to lose weight. You wanna keep your blood sugar very stable and very low. Not low, but I mean under...
Stable.
Yeah, stabilized.
You want to hit the center line.
Exactly. And the other thing that's interesting about that is stable blood sugar gives you stable energy throughout the day. You don't have those, because what happens when your blood sugar spikes and it crashes, you get really tired and you feel like taking a nap. And people that are struggling with weight most of the time don't even realize that they're eating foods that constantly bring the level up. Like they crave something like candy or whatever, brings the level way up, and then shortly after, it brings it way down. And then when it goes way down and it goes below the baseline, the body goes, oh crap, we need to bring our blood sugar up again.
Throughout these talks, I'm gonna always equate everything back to my love of Wing Chun, of Kung Fu. So, and I can't help that, that's who I am, but you're probably already on here initially from finding out who I am, and Marc is a student of mine that really I'm a student of his when it comes to diet and understanding these things greater. But the equation here is in Wing Chun, we want to stay along the center line, and we don't want big oscillations.
Yeah.
And that's what he's talking about, big oscillations. Oh, well, we're feeling great, great. Oh, okay, now we're tired, we're tired. It's the same exact thing. And we call this sensitivity to pressure. When, in Kung Fu terms, this is awareness. It's an awareness of what we're taking into our body, and therefore what we give away.
Yes. Right?
So it's this it's an internal approach to dealing with the external world.
100%.
Very, very internal Kung Fu. Mm-hmm. So less oscillations, less ups, less downs, and more awareness of what's going on. So mindful eating, but mindful as to why, not just okay, I should be doing this.
Right.
But wait a second. Let's look at the reasoning of it. And if we can keep in mind what our end goal really is, and that we are internal beings, and we are approaching things from an internal mindset, The internal mindset is not externally focused. In other words, it's not immediate gratification. That's very, very difficult, especially when we do live in an external world that is about immediate gratification. But don't sell yourself short. You're smarter than that. You're smarter than the immediate gratification that maybe a young child may need. You can choose. Your choices change these things. So the more you know, the better you can be. The end goal is happiness. The end goal is to feel damn good. Okay? To feel damn good. So don't sacrifice the immediate gratification of that moment because you're feeling whatever it may be, maybe an emotional eater, right? Wait a second. If you're an emotional eater, what you're doing is you're going to continue that emotional downside. So depression can be exacerbated or even brought on by things that you're eating.
For sure.
You're feeling like, you're feeling horrible, and then all of a sudden you're feeling worse later on, and you want an immediate gratification because you're just feeling so bad. So let me just do this to help.
And if you look at it, the average kind of breakfast that's out there is a donut, right? Spikes the blood sugar. They start getting tired. Oh, I gotta get the coffee. I'm tired. And when you're tired, you don't feel like taking on the world, so you artificially stimulate adrenal glands and everything else with that caffeine, and your blood sugar's kind of starting to try to recover, but it's just, what it does to you internally is not good. It's creating all kinds of negative hormones inside you. You're gonna pay the price for them later. So, like Adam's saying, if you stay on your goal and you stay even and level, you'll have that energy throughout the day, and you'll feel great throughout the day. And without the spikes and without the highs and the lows, and also your body physically will start to get more fit because your body knows how to regulate itself. What it doesn't know how to do is it doesn't know how to counterbalance all of these things that we're throwing at it with chemicals and things, and that have become really common, and kind of, and then on the other hand, you have people that say, well, how about I'll just do a bagel in the morning? Well, a bagel, if you look at the glycemic index, again, very, very high, because it's just made out of flour. Anything made out of flour and air enters the bloodstream like that. And whatever enters the bloodstream too quickly causes insulin to spike, because the pancreas goes, man, I gotta throw out insulin, So it's, all of a sudden, blood sugar's high again, you get tired again. And it gets to be that cycle. And so when people are tired and they're constantly going through these emotions, and when you're tired and lethargic, your mindset is not right. It's just like, you just don't feel like doing anything. And when you don't feel like doing anything, that's not really the empowered life. That's like the exact opposite of doing something.
What about some examples? Like a good breakfast. What would you recommend?
Absolutely. So this is another thing that's going to be a little controversial, but there are certain types of foods. Like ingredients that are in egg yolks, for example. People are like, no, just the whites. Well, you're missing a lot of the essential fats if you don't eat the yolk for example, in eggs. And those essential fats are not only essential for hormonal balance, but weight loss and kind of keeping it, our brains need fat. We need essential fats to think and to be sharp and to be focused.
So eggs.
Yeah, so
eggs are a good.
So something like eggs in the morning, and again, range-fed, cage-free eggs. Where the chicken was allowed to roam, and not just cooped on top of other chickens in this tight little, confined space. When they're allowed to be free chickens.
Well, we are talking about the mind, body, and spirit, and if we're talking about where the food comes from and how they're treated, there's quite an argument to be made that what is the emotional state of what you're eating, and then if it's an egg, then what was the emotional state of the mother of the egg, that you're eating, the hen.
Yes.
Energy doesn't die. Yes, we talk about Kung Fu energy. Energy can't die. It's just transformed. So if you're eating something that has a low emotional state because they're really depressed,
Yeah.
you're eating something that comes from that. I know this can be a little out there for some of you, but we believe it. We believe this stuff. We are all energies, and the more you can actually appreciate the integrativeness of us all, we can all be more healthy instead of feeling so separate. Instead of, okay, this is me, and so what? How the hens, treat it. Well, they're literally you can measure things that tell you, how they're feeling. Emotional states of things. We are emotional, spiritual states, and we're trying to flow. We're trying to become one with it, and not just be so separated. So.
Yeah. Well, even the early Native Americans, when they would hunt, and they would with a bow and arrow, and they would aim for the heart of the animal, something that would kill the animal quickly, because even they knew that if the animal is going to be struggling and running around in pain, that's creating an energy in the animal that is, just like Adam was saying, is an energy that's much of anxiety and fearfulness, and it actually creates a toxicity in the blood of that animal. So even they knew, and I don't know if it was just instinctively or just over time, but they knew that it's like, yeah, we're gonna. And a lot of people think that this is strange, but after killing the animal, they would go and they would say a prayer, and it's like the nature of blessing our mood, blessing our food, or blessing our saying grace at the meal. That has a lot of interesting new research behind it. Blessing the water that you drink. There's actually some crazy experiments that have been done recently where people would change really the composition, the structure of water by the intention that they were putting out, the energy they were putting out. I mean, there's some experience that show, valid scientific data behind that stuff, that literally you can speak intentions into water, and that by praying a blessing over what you're about to eat or about to drink actually has huge benefits to us. So we can say, that's silly, but on the other hand, what if it wasn't silly? What if there really was something to it? So we just, obviously part of Unchained Today is we taking all that stuff that's holding people back and that's too controversial maybe to talk about or whatever.
Absolutely. We don't claim to know everything, but at the same time, let's all open our minds. Let's all not be closed-minded in order to say, oh, there's a lot of things that I might not know. And not so that we can be led down, down silly ideas. That's not the point. The point is, can you be open-minded enough to just consider it, and just consider it enough to have that possibility. And this is how greater levels of consciousness and awareness within ourselves and our interconnectedness with food, with ourselves, with one another, with the world around us, can help us all. And then we're not just users. It's a give and take, a natural give and take, and it's not just so much take. We have got to become more integrated in this approach, and this is one of the topics of that we want to bring through Unchained, in addition to foods, but other ways to bring our energy, not to make it, it's really, we're already connected. We're already there. It's just our mind, our ability to accept those things that are beyond what I think most people kind of accept, without obviously losing ourselves. So groundedness, and also seeking more. We don't, this is the yin and yang of what we do, the groundedness, and also looking for more and being open to more things. So we have a breakfast food, eggs.
Yep.
Anything else that you could?
Yeah, absolutely. So
for breakfast?
Yeah. So the interesting thing too is there's new research too on certain there are certain times of the day when certain fruits are have an advantage to you. There's new research for a lot of guys out there that, for example, pomegranate can elevate testosterone, and this is pretty amazing because pomegranate's a good tasting fruit as it is. Now there are times to eat it. The best time would be probably after a workout when you can take in more of those sugars. I think there's a reason for every type of fruit and every type of food on our planet. You just have to kind of learn when it's okay. I mean, obviously you're not going to just sit around eating pomegranates all day. But if you're going to do an athletic event and you need some energy calories or things like that, simple sugars, or right after when glycogen stores are way open. But back to breakfast real quick. One of the things with other than those cage-free eggs and things like that, so you're going to get some protein, you're going to get some good nutrition. Depending on what your goals are, as far as carbohydrate, one of the most favorable types of starchy carbohydrate is actually a potato. Potatoes kind of got a bad rap from a lot of different things, but that's a very digestible. There's a lot of societies that have lived kind of almost exclusively on potatoes in their diet and have done just fine with it. You want to avoid obviously processed cereals, things like that. Things that are, again, when you look at most of these cereals out there, the first two ingredients are some type of flour, whether it's a corn flour, and some type of sugar. And corn flour and sugar, all they're going to do when they get in your system is spike your insulin level. Same thing with a lot of breads. Breads are made of flour, and that's their primary ingredient. The other thing when it comes to carbohydrate sources from bread is the wheat. And I used to be down on a lot of these people that used to say, oh, I'm gluten-free, and I'd say, come on, what's the difference? We're able to digest wheat. Well, there's a lot of, again, not just new research, but a lot of research that talks about inflammation and gluten and how it kind of restricts certain hormones from operating optimally. The other thing, just as a quick tangent, because we're talking kind of about diet foods in some places, is artificial sweeteners. I didn't know this in the past, but I was doing a lot of these sport drinks and things. When you're into fitness and stuff, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to drink
like Red Bull and
stuff. Or I'm going to drink this protein powder, or this. There's a lot of different pre-workout drinks and things, and they have artificial sweeteners in them. And I used to think, oh, what's the difference? And some of the diet sodas that have artificial sweeteners, I'm talking about aspartame, I'm talking about sucralose. And there's not really a lot. There's a lot more awareness about aspartame now. Most of the products have done away with aspartame. There are still some soft drinks that have aspartame. Do not drink anything with aspartame in it. There's just so much. There's so much negative stuff behind that we know now. And it's interesting whenever you start to see health products that have on their label no aspartame in them. And they're not going to say that on their label unless they're starting to say, oh, there's some really bad stuff that happens with people. But one of the main reasons artificial sweeteners, when we get back to the spirit, we get back to the mind, again, there's tons of research behind this, but this is what Adam and I believe. Our minds are literally like a transceiver, like a radio. And when we have thoughts, that thought is energy. Thoughts are things, as the book Think and Grow Rich talks about, Napoleon Hill. And that thought energy is it's a real thing. When Nikola Tesla said, you want to understand the universe, think of in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And our thoughts actually vibrate. They vibrate at a frequency. It's kind of like a radio. If you turn on a radio indoors, that's going to penetrate the walls, concrete, glass, whatever, and that signal is going to be picked up by the tower. Well, how is it possible for a signal to move through walls like that? And when we're driving in our car, the satellite signals and things like this, how is that possible? Well, our brains are the same way. And the things that we set as goals and the thoughts that we have as goals, it's kind of like we're like a radio transmitter and we're also a radio receiver. Well, again, this is controversial stuff, but there's a lot of new research showing that artificial sweeteners impede that thought vibration activity in certain ways. So if you're interested...
So it offers resistance to...
Correct.
To the ability to...
yeah. It's kind of like...
connect, be sensitive.
Yeah, exactly. To have a clean transmission.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it is a chemical.
Yeah.
So things that are chemicals and drugs.
Yeah, they alter the thought. Absolutely.
They alter that, and they stop our natural ability to do certain things.
Yes.
You know, obviously, I'm not against all, you know, drugs for people that,
Right.
you know, need these certain things. But at the same time, what is, you know, these other things, such as caffeine,
Yeah.
such as sugar, such as these fake sugars as well, are drugs.
Yes.
And if you think they're not drugs, stop thinking it.
Yeah.
Because they are getting in the way of your natural ability to be sensitive, be aware,
Right.
and be mindful to what's going on.
Right.
It's true. It is what it is. Now, I realize all this information we're giving you, you're still going to take as a grain of salt, or you might know it, but then the other thing is, well, okay, I know what I should do, but then what am I going to do?
Right.
Right? So, little by little, if you can change some of your habits and bring that into your daily life, that's what we're talking about. You don't need to go from ground zero to the top right away. Back to Kung Fu.
Yes.
We call it the little idea. The first set of Wing Chun is called the little idea. One of the reasons it's called the little idea is because you got to start small. You start little. Little tiny victories. Little tiny victories are going to build into the big idea. The big idea. So into something concrete. Starts with that little idea. So make little tiny changes, but make sure you stay on track. A lot of people start to make little changes, and then all of a sudden they get tired of those changes and they go back to something else. You got to keep your mind on point. And this is what it's coming down to again. Know your goal. Know where you're headed. Know what you're doing, and don't let life distract you from where you're headed, because happiness, I think we all deserve it.
Absolutely.
And this is the cool thing about life is we choose it. We
Yes.
constantly choose it. We choose our own happiness. We choose what we feel is going to make us happy day in and day out.
Yep.
If you're choosing certain things that are the immediate gratification, then you've got to take a hard look at yourself. And we all do it to some degree. But we've all got to take a hard look at ourselves and say, well, wait a second. Is that really helping me to get to the happiness that is going to be, oh man, this is grounded happiness.
Yes.
It's not surface level stuff. It's not just external stuff. Grounded happiness is this internally driven groundedness, and it's all Kung Fu.
Yes.
Everything's Kung Fu. I get really excited talking about, because everything translates into
It is,
this.
and the discipline that Adam's talking about in the very first form, it's the most disciplined form there is, because you have to be still, and you have to, literally all of the things that you're focusing on doing, the independence of movement with your hand versus where your elbow is, and everything is like, everything matters. And when he was talking about the chemicals, comfort foods, you've heard that term, comfort foods. A lot of these commercial fast food meals have these chemicals that literally create an addiction. And that's intentional. That's not an accident. You get addicted to the combination of the MSG, the caffeine, the sugar, the salt in these ratios. And they're formulated like perfectly. If you've ever seen the movie or heard of it called Super Size Me, it's worth watching for that reason. In the movie, this guy that's really hasn't had the fast food habit forces himself to eat fast food for 30 days, and when he first starts, he's literally throwing up. His body's rejecting it because of the chemicals and things. And then later, it turns around, and now his body craves it, and now he only feels good when he's eating the fast food. And then toward the end of it, his doctor says to him, you've got to stop eating this fast food. You're going to die. You have problems in your liver. You have all these health problems that have been created by these chemicals that you're eating. So it's like, yeah, you're going to, one way or another, you can get used to something that's good for you or get used to something that's bad for you. And you have the free will to choose. And if right now, for example, you're someone that's addicted to a lot of these comfort foods, you got to look at this long term. You got to look at the bigger picture. It feels comfortable now, and making a change would require a lot of discipline. It would be uncomfortable for a while. It's going to suck for a while. I mean, let's face it, you're faced with this the hot apple turnover or a stalk of broccoli, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go with the turnover. But the thing is, and again, there's times that you can indulge on those type of things, but if that's the mainstay of your diet and you're going from comfort meal to comfort meal to comfort meal, you got to look at what that's doing to not just your body, but your thoughts and everything that's inside you. And the discipline, the self-discipline, that's very similar to Kung Fu. I tell you what, I've done a lot of other martial arts. This is the most disciplined of all of them, that requires the most amount of internal commitment, the most amount of really just self-discipline of anything out there. And it's the same way, coincidentally, with good nutrition and taking care of yourself. And it requires a tremendous amount of discipline, but you look at it like the cost and the results. And I'm 50 years old. So, and I feel just as healthy and good. I mean, there's minor aches and pains that maybe I didn't have when I was in my 20s, but I feel great. And so we want to be able to extend this same kind of good feeling to you, but it has to do with choices, that you make. And speaking of those choices, can we put a plug in for our event coming up Wednesday?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so this is a shameless promotion.
If you're local in the area, Orange County, we're having a night. It's part of our Wing Chun nights here in Orange County. It'll be Dana Point here at this school, and it's called Kung Fu Wellness. What this is going to be is it's going to be Marc talking a lot about these diet things, uncovering a lot of the things that he's come up with throughout the years. He's really dedicated a lot of his life to learning more about nutrition. He was also a personal trainer. He's very, very, very disciplined. Probably one of the most disciplined people I know when it comes to diet and exercise. So he's going to be part of that. Part of that Kung Fu Wellness is what he's talking about. We're also going to discuss some specific Wing Chun related exercises that you can do. A lot of traditional Sifus talk about, you can't exercise, you don't want to work out, you'll mess it all up. Oh, wait a second. No, that's not true at all. But there are certain exercises that will mess your Kung Fu up. So you need to know which ones to do and which not. We're gonna talk about that, and we're also gonna go into some of the energy, the qigong, the energy work, and the meditative elements of Kung Fu. So that's this Wednesday, January the 9th, here in Dana Point at 6:30 at our Dana Point school. So the Dragon Institute. Make sure that you got that. If you don't have that anywhere in the descriptions or anything, but that's where we'll be, right here on Pacific Coast Highway. But yeah, mentioning the exercise type of thing. So now there are ways that, again, taking in the discipline, changing just some certain choices. And I'm not someone that would want to take anything away from someone. I'm just about giving you a substitution. For example, there are healthy choices that will give you the same texture, the same kind of flavor as something really bad for you. So rather than just taking something out of your diet and saying, I can't have that anymore, let's make a substitution with something that's just a better choice for you, for your vitality, for your long-term health, for your energy, and if you have weight loss goals or anything like that, a much better choice. But the exercises as well, when you start moving around, you're going to feel better. I mean, it's just a fact. The people that don't get any exercise, the bad habits perpetuate each other. Typically when you find people that are sluggish and just don't feel good, well, chances are they're not up running around either. They're not out taking a walk. They're not going out and playing basketball or anything like that. They're literally kind of on the couch most of the time. And so these bad habits can create this bad cycle this way, or you can do the opposite and create a good cycle this way. And I'm not saying you've got to become a fitness fanatic, but just to the ball's always rolling one way or another.
It is.
There's momentum going one way or another. If you think you're just still, you're not. If you think you're still, you're actually going backwards.
Correct.
Right? So we got to get that ball rolling. Energy is moving. It's not static. You can't lock it up. It's got to flow, so it's just a matter of which way it's flowing. Now, does the ball have to roll really fast? No. But the key is which way is it rolling?
Right.
And where does it start to stop? You know, if you're going good for a while and it starts to stop, well, hang on. Let's keep that going, even at a slow pace. But you can't just let it all go. You just can't do that. You've got to keep that ball rolling somehow with what you're eating. So we talked a little bit about breakfast. What about lunch?
Yeah, so what you want to have is you want to have a kind of a general rule of thumb is you want to have your protein component of your meal, because proteins are just important because you know the amino acids that are when protein is digested, it breaks down into what's called amino acids, and these are literally what builds our tissue, helps us repair muscle and things like that. So protein really is kind of a foundation for your diet, and your protein portion should be about the size of your fist, right? In general, you want to have some type of cruciferous vegetable, like a crunchy type of vegetable. The best type of vegetables, like if you're not doing the super greens drink, you could do these in conjunction with it, but broccoli, spinach, things that are crunchy and fibrous. Those things will slow the glycemic index down of other foods. They'll digest very slowly. The darker the green, usually the better, more nutrient dense the food is. And it's good for overall digestive health as well. So without these things, you're missing a lot of those trace minerals. For example, spinach is really high in vitamin A. Broccoli is very high in vitamin C. Vitamin A and vitamin C are two of the main antioxidants. And so if you're not getting some of this nutrition, you're missing all of this good, kind of the way it works in the body is you have these three kind of categories, right? You have your proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and fats. It's really four. The carbohydrate your body can actually live without for a certain period of time, but because your brain's preferred source of fuel is glucose, is carbohydrate, if you go on these Atkins or these ketogenic diets for too long, again, you can actually mess yourself up long term. And again, I know that's not a scientific term, mess yourself up, but it's the key is balance, and the key is having foods that are on our planet in the right ways at the right time. So for lunch, again, if you had something a starchy carbohydrate with it, like a wild rice or a sweet potatoes or something like that, where there's some starchy carbohydrate in there, again, give you that stable energy. And just backtracking to the glycemic index, you can look for carbohydrates that are 50 or below. A lot of times those are things like oatmeal, those are things like wild rice, sweet potatoes. There are starchy carbohydrates that are low on the glycemic index that you can eat and you won't have that noticeable blood sugar spike. And the other key is
white rice is not one of them.
Yeah, white rice is a little higher, but one of the tricks with the glycemic index too, as long as if you're putting them on the same plate, if you're eating the protein and the carbohydrate together, it does blunt the glycemic effect, because what's happening is now you're getting kind of, you know, as you're digesting it, your body's digesting the protein and the carbs together, it's slowing it down, which is why if you're gonna have something like, here's another no-no to not have like just by itself, rice cakes. People think that they're super healthy. Again, it's puffed rice and air. Those things are super high in the glycemic index.
So rice alone, it would be better, maybe beans and rice.
Yeah, you would want to have, exactly.
Or
something
steak and rice.
Something that slows it down, absolutely. So when you can combine foods and slow them down, you can even cheat a little. Like for example, if you knew you were going to eat a rice cake, you could put some peanut butter on it to slow it down. Fats are another thing that will slow down the glycemic response.
Proteins and fats.
Yeah, however, you want to be careful about food couplings too. You don't want to really couple carbohydrates and fats together too often, because what happens is your body's looking for a fuel source now, and it's like, well, I can use fat as a fuel source or I can use carbs. And if you do both, it's kind of like, I can't use both of them. So it's kind of like you just filled your gas tank full of premium unleaded, and then like once the tank's full, you're like, well, let's put some unleaded fuel in there. And the body's like, no, I got plenty of fuel, and so it's going to
spill out. Can't really use it.
Can't really use it. So what it'll do is it'll store it. And the thing that's unfortunate about like people that eat like cheese and crackers, for example, that's a really,
because that's a fat and a carb.
It's a fat and a carb, and it's the cracker is basically flour So you got a high glycemic. So now you got this triple whammy.
So cheese alone is okay.
Cheese alone by itself is okay because it's a protein and a fat, which is an okay food coupling.
But if you're doing crackers, you should probably have meat.
Correct.
Like crackers and meat.
Exactly. So you can do it exactly.
Protein or
so
some
just
kind
like
of peanut butter or something.
Exactly. So just like Adam is saying, so you could do a protein and a carb. You can do a protein and a fat. Just avoid the carbs and the fats. So just when you're thinking in terms of like coupling foods, if you're just gonna if you're not gonna have a full plate or something like that, think of it as like the way your body will respond.
Great to know. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Now when you go out to a restaurant, another thing that they're gonna put in front of you first is the bread. Avoid eating the bread
or
first.
chips here in Southern California,
which is amazing, and they taste amazing, and it's one of those things where when you get the hot, especially if they're hot, you know, the chips that come out and all this,
and they're homemade.
Yeah,
they're parade here, believe me.
Yeah.
But we're
right now we're like, oh, let's go get some chips.
Yeah.
But one of the keys you can do, and again, these are things that you can do in moderation, but you can still have the chips, you can still have the bread, but just get your protein, it's like have the entree, get some protein in your system first before you start introducing the carbs. Now, if there's no way that you can, I'm going to teach you another little trick, and there's going to be a bunch of these at next Wednesday's event, so tune in, because I'm going to share, there's some controversial stuff that you're going to hear here. It's going to be awesome. But another little trick, now use this in moderation. If you don't have any protein yet, and you're famished, and you're just like, man, I just have to have one of those chips, I just have to have something, I just have to have it before my entree gets here, and your willpower is weak, and you cave in.
You cave in, but you only have one.
That's right, but you're right. You can get some, and again, this is something that everybody's not going to go for, but you can ask the waiter or waitress to bring you some lemons, and you can take some lemon juice, and you can get some lemon juice in your system first, and that will blunt glycemic response to a certain degree. Now, you can't have a basket of chips after you have a little squirt of lemon juice.
So if they give you a lime or a lemon, you can take that and you can bite on it a little bit, let that in your system. For how long?
You want just a few minutes, get it into your stomach, and then you'll find, and again, don't overdo the carbs. Really look at it like protein is going to be your better go-to. This is just a little trick that you can use to kind of blunt that response. Also, lemon juice is, believe it or not, high alkaline, so it's really healthy for you. There's a lot of times like I played football in junior high, high school, and we used to just have lemon water. We didn't even really know it was really good for us, but it really is a great way to hydrate. It's something that's very favorable to a good blood pH. We'll talk about blood alkalinity and why that's important too on Wednesday.
All right, well, we did breakfast, lunch. What about dinner?
Okay, so now dinner, unless you're going to be super active after you eat dinner you need to wind down on a lot of the carbohydrate. So ideally for dinner, try to do if your goal is weight loss, and your goal is just kind of a feeling full, do your protein and your fibrous vegetables. Do protein and vegetables. Now that can be you can have like a spinach salad with salmon, or you can have chicken and broccoli. Also, this is another little quick tip. There's going to be more of these, especially for you guys out there. Broccoli is great at flushing excess estrogen through the system, particularly if you have it at night. You'll find that if you if you do, especially things like and cauliflower, same type of thing. But there's something in broccoli called DIM. I don't know how to exactly pronounce the full name of it, but it's DIM, and it suppresses free estrogen from the system. So you start eating broccoli in the evening. It's good for you. It's also got some anti-cancer fighters in it, high in antioxidants, high in vitamin C. Broccoli's high in protein as well. It's just, it's not everybody's favorite vegetable, but there are ways to prepare it.
But broccoli, salmon, some kind of meat, and
some kind of vegetable like that.
So meat and vegetables is great for dinner.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so when
try not carbs.
Yeah, try to reduce the amount of carbs. Now again, glycogen storage in the body. If you're not eating carbs throughout most of the day, you can have more in the evening. But I like to have carbohydrate when it's usable. But if there are ways you can trick the system and eat pretty much kind of ketogenic or Atkins throughout the day, and if you really want to have your carbs at night, that's another little cheat. Like if you know you're going out to dinner and there's going to be pasta, and you're like, man, I know there's going to be pasta, and you know that dinner's on the calendar, a day or so in advance, you're like, okay, well, so during the day, then I'm going to really limit the carbohydrate, starchy carbs that I eat. So my glycogen storage and my the stored glycogen is going to be really low, more depleted.
Okay.
So then I go and I have my big pasta meal, and more of it is going to go into glycogen as opposed to being stored as fat
because you haven't already
Yeah,
used that throughout the
exactly.
day, so you don't. It's not excess.
Yeah, you're in a depleted state, much like after when you're doing.
That's great to know.
Yeah, much like after you're doing an anaerobic or a weight training workout, your glycogen is stored in the muscles and in the liver, and you actually will run through by using anaerobic work with weights or something where it's burning sugar, muscle sugar, as opposed to aerobic, which is burning oxygen. You're burning that glycogen up with the workout. So after your workout is a great time to eat a lot of carbs because it's going to go into glycogen storage and not be stored. So if you're really craving something sugary, if you're a guy that is loves to have a donut every once in a while, wait till after your workout. At least a donut is going to go into more of the right spots,
Right on.
Yeah. So just little things like that.
Well, great. I think we've got a lot of tips in there, and I know I've learned a lot, so hopefully you guys have. And thank you for following our second episode of Unchained Today. Comment below. Let us know how you like this, what more you'd like to see in the future. So I'm Adam Williss. This is Marc Allen. Thank you much.
See you next time. Thank you.